are you talking about?
Thank you, Pete.
Good morning, everyone.
Just before we began, Celia goes, "What are we talking about?" And I said, because we'd had themes and stuff this morning, and I said, "Oh, everything, nothing." And then I heard the nothingness of the world and everything of the power of the mind, where the split seems to occur and all the stories come from. And that's everything, and it deserves our full attention. And the other is nothing, and even though it's really helpful to begin with stories when we're stuck in them and trace them back, it's to the everything, where all the power is, and the point of choice is. And that's everything. And there's no in and out, or stories of the world, or painful stories of the world. It's all happening in that point in the mind where all stories are springing from. And it's everything. And if we're willing to put all eyes on the kingdom, which is everything, then all that power is totally accessible to us, and there's absolutely no denial involved. And yet, all that seems practically to appear in your life will be addressed if we're willing to draw back to that point. And I just had an experience last night of, even with what seemed like very joyful experiences, very high, very potent. I felt like it was in limitlessness. I couldn't quite understand why we even go to bed at night. I couldn't understand why we weren't just up doing what we do during the day all night again. The feeling was very much, there was this heightened experience of passion. And then, a story would creep in, like of where it's coming from. And I was like, no, that's not that. Where is it really coming from? So it's not just that these are stories of trauma or victimization and victimizers that we need to withdraw from. We just want to see the experience where it is and take total responsibility for it. To come back to that aliveness and that true power where there are no victims and victimizers, because there's no subject and object split. There's nothing. There's no dichotomy. There's only that experience of what is now and power. And so, of having this heightened experience, and there's thought coming in like, oh, it's like a sexual attraction. Is that what it is? That's the kind of way I associate the energy. It's like, no, it's not that. It's not that. It's just vibrancy, and back to the vibrancy, and watching the stories creep in, even of what it might be or what I might be thinking, and just allowing them, and then, no, that's not actually what it is. That's not actually what it is. And then a little story of fear, and you feel a little grip in the tummy, and it's like, no, that's not what it is. And coming right back, and it was so potent, it was going back and forth, and it was just coming deeper and deeper in, and just this sense of brightness and expansion. And we were talking about this idea of innocence and what is, and this has to be practical. Has to be now. And we were just feeling this really free-flowing service, and so it feels like the Spirit's saying, well, this is the core of it all, so everything that comes from this, then whoever's feeling to speak, like, that will be perfect, because this is where it's at. Whatever it is that you think is either making you joyful or weighing on your heart this moment, it's still this point of true power, and you do not need to be afraid of it. And I've seen in my own life that it's my denial of that power, even growing up, putting myself under authority of making authorities out of parents, teachers, older cousins, siblings, victimizer roles, making it real. I couldn't ever really get into it enough. There was this part of me that was very aware that there was something else going on, and that I had some kind of choice in this, in the way I was viewing it. And I had to be convinced that I was a victim, and then I had to buy into that story and, continue with it. And it feels so exciting to me to be back in this experience of this true power right now, where the idea of being a person in the world is loosening, so that all of the stories just get, it's not resolved, they just get undone. And I was just saying, we were joining earlier, it's a bit like, instead of you having to figure something out and fix it and forgive something of the past that seemed to really happen, you just allow your experience, whatever it is, even of trauma or a good childhood or joy or whatever it is, you just allow it to be. And then it's a bit like having turned the whole house over looking for your keys, and you come back into where you usually have them, and they're there but 1 inch to the side on the counter, and you go, oh yeah, okay. I remember that's where I left them. And that's it, and it was just there all along, ready for us. As soon as we were ready to come back into that experience of power and safety, and that we're loved, but that comes first. And I just feel so excited about, I always had this experience like I was letting myself down my whole life. I didn't really understand what it was, and I see now it was this denial of this power. And it's truly humble because it's total responsibility. Like, it's total responsibility for the whole world that I choose to see and how I choose to see it. And we were talking about this attraction we had to watching Noah, and I said I'd so love to show Noah to everyone. It's extremely intense, and the whole thing is like it looks like trauma from start to end. I said, but if you could watch with the spirit, with thought, trust would settle every problem now, and everything is involuntary at the beginning, it's totally different. Like, if you could watch Noah from that, it's a modern version of it. It's very dark and brooding and conflict, and Noah's not sure what God wants him to do, and he's trying to get it right and be good, and he just feels wrong the whole time. And you know, if you could watch that film just laughing and joyful the whole way through it, or not, it's okay, whatever will come up, but that's all we're being asked to do, because this is all done. This is all done, and this isn't something you have control over in the form of what's unfolding. So it's about watching this rerun with the spirit and with the trust that all you're going to find out is that you're innocent. Yeah, I can just feel this point of power and this choice, and I think my gratitude is overwhelming right now. So I think we want to open it up. So if there's anything...
Yeah, I feel like I have something to say. It was, we had a beautiful sharing this morning. And I can just feel, I'm hearing in my head like we all feel like we're a victim. We're a victim of being cast out of heaven, and we're here suffering on earth with our inadequacies, and there's just like huge concepts that we embrace. That I embrace, that I'm a victim of this world. I was even saying last night, I just remember like, I felt like I never ever fit in, like I was always an outcast. I don't ever remember not being an outcast. Even from a childhood, I felt like I didn't belong. But there's like this sense of victim, like I don't belong, like that's a concept that I embraced pretty early on. And we were talking about victim and perpetrator this morning. And and innocence, but there has to be somewhat of an acknowledgement that we do believe that we're a victim, that we are whatever that concept is that needs to be undone, like that I whatever it is that we feel like we are in touch with in that form of victimhood, like I'm not good enough, or even coming to share something at a service like this, what do I even have to share that would benefit anybody else? Like, that's like, what, like, it's like a littleness, like, because who am I to shine? Who am I to be God's son? It's like a fear of stepping into that. It's a fear of stepping into that. Into remembering the true innocence that everything that I have, everything that each person has is so valuable, that can be shared, and even if you feel to hold back, that's still okay. But I can feel like I'm having this experience this week. We were all sitting in this room, and I was sitting where Val's sitting, like right where the camera is actually, and I could just feel like everyone in here was just, and I feel it right now, like everyone in here is just, and I think it's happening every single moment. Everyone is here just to support me in my remembering my innocence. Like everybody's just wanting to remember the love. They see the love in themselves, and that helps them to remember that they are loved in themselves. There is that innocence in themselves, and that's all that's actually ever happening, I think. That's what I seem to be experiencing, that we just want, it's like everybody just come out and play, just come out and share what you have to share, and be in that joy. And if you hold back, that's fine. We'll still be just standing here waiting for you to shine your light and share what you have to say or whatever gift you have. We watched Kung Fu Panda 2 last night, which was a pretty cool movie. But there's one moment when he's healed his mind, and they're all working to. Well, I don't think he actually had achieved inner peace quite yet, but he was with his mighty companions, and they were all flying down, like going to go get the guys. But they were all in formation to fight the bad guys, and he just felt so much love. He just said, "I love you all so. I love you guys." Like he just was so in his purpose, even though he's like fumbling around and he's not the perfect ninja kung fu warrior, but he is, and he's perfect. Actually, he is perfect, but it doesn't look as stealthy and as perfect as we think that it should look. But because there's some idea about what perfection will look like. There's some idea about what the Son of God should do and what the Son of God should say or how they should present themselves in the world. And that's all just a spiritual self-concept that we try to hold on to. Yeah, it feels pretty gentle, and I don't know what I want to say. But that's been my experience this week. Just so much gratitude for everything that everybody has to offer, and I feel like I want to invite myself to share, and I want to invite everybody else to share. Because you're not a victim. We're not a victim.
Seats of power open. Can share.
I also have this reading from the Course too. I could do that. It's like flicking the pages. I flicked the chapters, and this one came right to the top. Setting the goal. The practical application of the Holy Spirit's purpose is extremely simple, but it is unequivocal. In fact, in order to be simple, it must be unequivocal. The simple is merely what is easily understood, and for this it is apparent that it must be clear. The setting of the Holy Spirit's goal is general. Now He will work with you to make it specific, for application is specific. There are certain very specific guidelines He provides for any situation, but remember that you do not yet realize their universal application. In any situation in which you are uncertain, the first thing to consider, very simply, is what do I want to come of this? What is it for? The clarification of the goal belongs at the beginning, for it is this which will determine the outcome. In the ego's procedure, this is reversed. The situation becomes the determiner of the outcome, which can be anything. The reason for this disorganized approach is evident. The ego does not know what it wants to come out of the situation. It is aware of what it does not want, but only that. It has no positive goal at all. Without a clear-cut positive goal set at the outset, the situation just seems to happen and makes no sense until it has already happened. Then you look back at it and try to piece together what it must have meant, and you will be wrong. That's the way we live. How could I have done this differently? That's all the ego. how could I have, whatever, what did I do wrong? Not only is your judgment in the past, but you have no idea what should happen. No goal was set with which to bring the means in line, and now the only judgment left to make is whether or not the ego likes it. Is it acceptable? Is it acceptable, or does it call for vengeance? The absence of a criterion for outcome set in advance makes understanding doubtful and evaluation impossible. The value of deciding in advance what you want to happen is simply that you will perceive the situation as a means to make it happen. You will therefore make every effort to overlook what interferes with the accomplishment of your objective and concentrate on everything that helps you meet it. This is quite noticeable that this approach has brought you closer to the Holy Spirit, sorting out of truth and falsity. The truth becomes what it can be used to meet the goal. The false becomes the useless from this point of view. The situation now has meaning, but only because the goal has made it meaningful. I feel like what that does, when I read that, I hear like the peace of mind is my one goal. Like that's all that we're doing here is focusing on the peace of mind. So if we hold that as in every situation, like what is this for? Oh, this sitting here right now, I'm here because I want peace of mind. So if I hold that in front, then anything that sort of gets in the way in my mind, not in the form, but in my mind, I can see that more clearly. It's not, I don't know, it's I'm really feeling the experience of, I'm really experiencing how important it is to watch the thoughts and how some are not even, like, it's no, not that. I don't have to even think that. And you were just saying to me earlier, Suzanne, you were saying, like, if we hold function as our support for our mind, then it's really clear when, and function, we use tasks and, areas, and if we hold that as a support for our mind, then when something comes in that's not of that function, it's very clear. You can be like, wait, something's not right here. I need to address it. I need to just clear my mind or join with somebody. It makes it much more simple and practical. So we're not chasing some etheric peace of mind. Because to me, I don't even know what that means. What am I even talking about, peace of mind? But there's a feeling in the moment. Peace of mind feels like something outside, in the future, rather than what's happening right now.
Yeah, we have this friend in Mexico, and she was, at the time that I was there, she was given the function to be the steward, and then at the same time she was going through letting go of a relationship that the ex-husband and the new girlfriend of ex-husband were both there. And so it was a lot of intensity. And it all comes down to the thing is this intricate relationship dynamics and how she wants to be clear and clean with the girlfriend and the ex-husband. And just see the temptation. It's not even clear what everybody was doing. They just get drawn to some kind of familiarity from the past. And there are all kinds of suggestions of what she could do. Or maybe you go for a walk with her, not with him, and you talk it through. And I was just no, to be honest, I tell you, there's only one thing that you need to do, be in function, because that seems to be completely irrelevant to what you're going through with the relationship dynamic. But that's what is given by the Spirit to be held on to, so that the mind, everything else that's not this, can be seen clearly, because it was not even clear of what was pulling everyone to do what. So I just remember consistently over months, the only advice I could give is in the function, in the function, in the function. And that is almost like a life-saving thing that she can hold on to. She was like, I don't know how to have a relationship with him. I said, what about being a steward to him? You know, not being an ex-wife to him, not being a mate, a friend, being a steward to him. Like, what about that? And use that to see the tendency of being a friend, of having something still there right now or not. And, you know, what is my relation to her? What about a steward? It's just very, very simple. It's always the same. And we're talking about a function as if it's, you know, a task. But yeah, just in that one event, I just saw that how there is no coincidence that Spirit is giving something very specific for you to do. And then because there is a healing to be facilitated in that period of time through our focus in function.
That's that movie Begin Again too. Like it's such good. It's such a good movie for these two people who are like had these life pains. I don't know.
Life pains.
I don't know.
That's good.
And they couldn't, and they wanted to even be romantic, but they were joining in the inspiration of the music. She was a musician, and he was a producer. And they just felt the joy of being together and sharing this, like in this way, it would be sharing the message or something, sharing living in a house for us or whatever feels the most inspiring or what's given. And then they couldn't even stay in their life pain because the Spirit was carrying them through with their inspiration. It's like there was no room for that victim story to hold on to because they are asking to share this beautiful message of love and I don't know. I mean, yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels like there's a backwardsness to it. I think I don't think at some point I would have thought that being so devoted to healing the mind would look like not a processing, a therapeutic form. Because when you do that, I would think somebody was saying it the other day here, when we do that sort of therapy, we actually helps to support us staying in that story of I'm the victim, I'm this, you're that, or whatever it is. It reinforces that, and we just don't even. I don't know. This community we don't even have time with that. We're just like brush it aside. You're crying, okay, cry. Yeah. Let's keep going.
Because it's like in that film, it's outlined in the steps in the assignment of the function. They have an album to produce during the summer. So if they just keep producing the album, sharing that message, if they just keep showing up to do that in the vibrancy, then everything else is taken care of. Every step unfolds along the way, just like he saw the vision of the orchestration from the Spirit at the very beginning. And she's doing a very half-hearted performance. He sees this magical experience on stage, and so that's the goal is set out front of what it's to be. It's to be completely orchestrated, where they surrender their past knowledge and they just give in to this joining and the unfoldment and not knowing what it's to be or look like and not using the past.
And it can be very fun too.
Oh, fun. It is a fun movie. Yeah, because it's like when Harry met Sally, it's like, oh, that's healing, I'll have that. I'll have what she's having. You know, that's, I can sign up for that. You know, there's willingness, like there's attraction. It's what the Spirit wants to use. There's a return to power right now. It's not some other time when healing is complete or something. A storyline of healing is complete. They returned. They just joined in it straight away. Yeah, it's almost like she had a record deal at the start. She didn't care what happened by the end, and she didn't care at the end what happened either. But she says, I always find if you don't care what happens when you play your hand, you tend to win. You know, so if you've surrendered the goal to the Spirit that it's peace, then the form outcomes are not part of. There's no hoping.
Yeah, because even in the function that we're given here,
yeah,
it's being told to us like we don't have to worry about like the outcome so much. It's just like this building was put up for sale, but it wasn't said let's sell it. It's like a very specific thing. It's like your role is to like promote Strawberry and David's book, but it's not to sell
anything.
1 million books. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's why we've called it the Peace Reigns department. PR.
Peace Reigns?
Peace Reigns. He said that David's like, your function is Peace Reigns. It's your function.
Can you go
It's in my contract.
Will you say a little more about that?
Yeah, it was beautiful because I think my whole life I've had this idea of horror of the thought of selling something. But we had a bookshop when I was growing up, and I always noticed that if there was a book that came in that I loved, we tended to sell like 20, 30, 40 copies of that book because all I was sharing was my love. And ironically, of all those books, they all had Course in Miracles reference to the back, but I never knew it. Or I never realized it all the way along. Quite a while before I was reading the bibliographies, at the back. And so my function is to stay high and wide. My function is to remember that this has all been done already, and that we're out like collecting the miracles. We're just seeing what happened next, and as much as possible to remain at peace with what actually happened. So we're doing promos and we lose footage, or something gets deleted, or I do this amazing 3 hours of shooting the most spectacular music videos and then realize I double hit the button and it's green, not red. Innocence and peace is my function, and then still attentiveness to using everything that I see that's happening in front of me to bring awareness to, is there any hidden guilt that's surfacing, is there any lack of wanting to watch, what's not watched is what's unconscious. Just so that's what it is. And I have to tell you that I've worked on projects for over 6 years at this stage, and I am so completely convinced this time that I'm loved no matter what unfolds. I'm convinced this time. I'm convinced. Every time we approach like seeming deadlines of stuff, I'm like, oh yeah. I don't feel a weight of expectation that something is going to happen. And then when stuff happens, it's just like it unfolds. And it's a great humbleness to that. And sometimes to do less, to actually be willing to sit there until it comes and then allow it. And my receptivity and my openness and my bright high-mindedness is my function, to be in that and to be following every guidance that allows me to stay very high in that ability and not even think they're personal preferences, like really follow every little intuition that's coming in. And that's very different because I'm just very good, work very hard, all in interference, all terribly unhelpful for this, actually. This is the willingness to take down the music that's already been written and already given, and there's an assigned moment where it pops through, and our function is to catch it, share it, by receiving it ourselves. Because we're very devoted, actually. Like, this is the book that we're sharing, like Unwind Your Mind Back to God, and then the Strawberry State of Mind. And we're very devoted to, if we're not experiencing it when we make the video or when we share the post on Facebook, if we don't receive like the actual experiences we do that, we're not extending anything. because we're the only one who can receive it. So literally we're extending nothing. If I don't feel at peace when I read that bio, if I don't feel open towards hearing what David has to say when I share that photograph, or that the way he looks in that picture, then yeah, so it's very simple and immediate, and for me, yeah, very grateful for the backdrop.
So peace reigns is the...
Yeah. So my function is to be willing to watch and look at everything that's not that flushes up.
Mm.
By being there. So it's not about being peaceful and keeping it down or something, keeping something together. It's actually looking far more like just allowing everything as it is. And I feel more free and more content and more, whatever this means, myself than I ever have before. I feel more welcome. Because the reason we're given any function or any backdrop is because this is the way it's to come through. So there isn't actually a filter that's a block. This is actually just the way it's to come through. So that's great.
Yeah, what is it for? That's what the question was.
Yeah.
What is it for? Is it for even sharing the message? It's more, it's...
The message is you're innocent. Let it play. Let it play through you. Let it look how it looks. Let it be how it is. And
Yeah.
yeah. Peace reigns is a statement of what is. For me to, that's the goal out front, for me to align my mind to. Anything else isn't true, and if I want to believe it, then I have something to align my mind to.
Yeah. It's fun. Does anybody have anything?
I keep hearing the gift of living together and letting go of the self-concept, the personal self, right? So these projects seemingly are given as a task or being with each other in a collaborative way. It's like, I used to always hear this, what's best for the whole, what's best for the whole. And I'd be like, I don't even know what that means, what's best for the whole, right? And then I was on some sort of project and I started to notice that just having that in awareness, what's best for the whole, starts to kind of dissolve this idea of my personal agenda. And, you know, this is really a radical message, the Course in Miracles. It's really letting go of the personal self and coming into the awareness of our true connection, right? So, yeah, I just keep hearing that. Like, it's such a gift to be able to have this scaffolding or these projects or whatever to keep the mind focused, but it's not really personal. It's like really allowing yourself to be so used in a way that starts to dissolve this personal agenda. Because personal agenda is painful. Actually being a person is painful. Being a human, trying to be a human, trying to keep everything together, you know, trying to do a good project, trying to make sure the book gets out, trying to be good stewards. It's very painful, so we drop, you know, we're just allowed this space to start to explore this dropping away of the personal self. And that can be very frightening, of course, because it's seemingly all we've ever known. That's what, we think we have to keep ourselves safe. We have to look a certain way to be loved, or we have to do certain things a certain way. It's just, as you start to lift out of it, you can start to see how much pain really we've lived in, without even really knowing it, actually. And that's what I love about this, being able to have this backdrop of community, because you don't even know how deluded you are until you start to question these concepts. And so I love this, just being able to share, and being able to seemingly go through this seeming process so that we can come into this moment. It's just about being devoted to the present moment. And that, of course, lets go of linear time, history. I mean, I had to face off with letting go of a personal history. I mean, who does that, really? We just take it for granted that, I grew up, I lived this way, it's this story, right? And not that the stories can't be used by the Spirit eventually, but it's like really questioning everything together. And then this feeling of what's best for the whole is, it's not about persons, and yet it starts out that way in a way. It's almost like to start taking everybody into consideration. Like, if I do this, how does it affect the community? Because it's crazy here. It's like one person does one thing that isn't quite in alignment, and there's this like ripple, right? Which is perfect. It's all for the undoing. But it's so cool how everything is set up, and none of this was designed by anybody. It just kind of organically, the Spirit knows what we need. And to let go of a self, to let go of an idea of who we think we are, is not a casual thing. It's like, it takes focus at first, and it takes vigilance, and it takes humility to start to just really see that we are all in this together. And so, yeah, I just felt to share that, because it is like there's the projects and the functions and keeping your function out front. It's just to focus the mind so that this self-concept can start to dissolve, and so that we can come into the awareness of who we truly are, which has nothing to do with what we're doing. So it is a backdrop so that the mind can loosen from what it thinks it is. And how beautiful it is to have this kind of devotion together, to be together in it, to just like, and the other thing that was just so, exciting to me right now is, to really connect with the light in my brother. Like, when I first came in there, my mind was so full of judgment. Who could be trusted? Who was ahead spiritually? Who knew more? Who was safe? Who wasn't? And it's like, now it's like just really seeing that there is something that brought us all together here, and that's what you connect with. You connect with that. And when you do that, because there is no brother really, it's like we use each other to come into this awareness that we are each other. And so to trust that, even though the brother may seem like they're not even that stable, but the minute you go, okay, this is who's in front of me, and to just use that completely, it's like this transformation happens in your own mind, right? Because, what you see in your brother, you see in yourself. So anyway, there's just a lot happening in my mind right now, just kind of the excitement of how this all works, and how beautifully it's been given without any effort on our part. We do not sit around and say, okay, now what are we going to do for everybody today? It's there's no plan, and at first that's very frightening to the ego. Like, I need to know what I'm doing, but we're giving these assignments and these projects, and it's like, just to come into the experience of, I can step back in my mind, and everything will be done for me. Everything will be given, and it's not personal. It's a state of mind. I mean, really, it's really coming into this perfect relaxation that I need do nothing. But of course the purification, all the doubts around that have to be washed away, right? So it's like just to allow that to happen. And that happens through just joining and the projects and this, call it the scaffolding. And then at a certain point the scaffolding can come down because the temple is built. And then there's just complete devotion to the present moment, where there is no linear time, there is no future, there is no past. It's just this moment. It's not personal. It's just this beautiful state of mind of peace and rest. So, yeah, that's what I want to share. It just feels so, I mean, believe me, it hasn't been easy, but it feels so easy now. Like, it's almost like, oh, wow. It's almost like it's like Jesus says in the Course, a journey without distance. It's like you have to take the journey to know that you didn't have to take the journey. It's like, oh. And then you can drop it. So, yeah. Thank you.
It's I was talking with Krishna about this. One of my favorite, I don't know all the characteristics of God's teacher, but I love trust. I mean, that's what my tattoo is, trust. But honesty is a really beautiful one as well. It's where the words and your actions and your thoughts are all just one, and like that's what the joining is so powerful for, so that we're joined in mind with what needs to be seemingly done. But there's a unit. That's where the unity, I guess unity comes in. The oneness comes in because we're so joined in the communication that there's a clear channel. There's not a question of like, should I do this or shouldn't I do this? We've joined on it, so it's clear that I can trust that that's what is given, because it's so light in my mind. Like, let's stay connected, let's communicate so that it's clear what needs to come through. Not so much that what needs to come through has to happen, but just so the mind can be clear, because I still believe that I'm this body and there's this cup, and we use that joining so the mind can just stay still. I don't know, I've really enjoyed that. If you start to feel that, or if I start to feel that something's unclear, like connect with somebody, connect with whomever I'm supposed to be connecting with, because that person probably watching the exact same thing, and then the ego's afraid that there's something wrong, or the person that's being called that's joined, they're afraid that something's wrong, and it seems like something's wrong, but really there's just a call for that clarity in the function or the area or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. You have to come back to peace.
Yeah.
Peace reigns.
And the ego's afraid of the peace.
We use each other because we can see each other, right? It's like we can't see this thing called the Holy Spirit, or the right-minded direction that we also desire to come into that experience. So we use each other to practice, always checking in. What are we checking in with? Well, at first it seems like we're checking in with each other because that's a great practice, right? When you get so used to being linked, then it's stepping stones to bring you into always being linked, always asking, what is the motivation, what is the purpose of everything? So it's beautiful to just, it's like a training ground to just use what's in front of us to remind us that, because when we're not linked, that's the only thing that needs to come to, now come back. And it's not with people, but we use that for now.
Right.
To get used to checking in all the time. Because this is the prayer. All of this pushes us into this devotion to this relationship.
But it's gentle. It's not a forced connection.
It lights up everywhere.
Kind of gentle sometimes. But it's okay.
It is like a bottom-up approach. Like a bottom-up approach, meaning that we are talking very specifically here in the project, and when we use a project, because everything that seemed to come up in the specific and very little thoughts, sometimes people even get embarrassed, like I shouldn't be, I should be talking about peace and not this, but this is actually the reflection that the blocks the peace, and it's not really specific, but to reveal that and to just see that this one actually hooks us into this individual identity and hooks us into the block, and to be able to reveal that, just use the example that I just talked about. We can't even see, especially in terms of a relationship, there's just so much there, and you don't really even know what are the hooks and what are the things that triggers, and it's so difficult to go back to the spirit. But in that particular case, when one person was the steward, and I said, can you just relate? Because all the questions were about relationship, and I said, how can you relate to him the same way you relate to other volunteers? Because that's the function she was given, was the steward, and everybody else there were volunteers. Can you relate the same way? She couldn't relate the same way, but she can see how differently she wants to relate to this particular person. And then so she could see very, very clearly, just in that specific context of the blocks that wants to come in, that little bit more than what is, given. And that's when she went there, that's where the hooks were, and that's where, the frustrations were. But it was all beautiful, because all of a sudden it became crisp, very, very simple, very, very clear. And that's, I would say, for all the projects and all the little upsets or thoughts and discussions, was really just, let's calm down, zoom it down to a very specific scenario, and not be afraid to talk about this scenario and the specific blocks, because there is no other block right here. This is it. And to be able to allow that to come up and get fully into it. If in that relationship context, I would say, you're not a person, that would not go anywhere. That would just not go anywhere. I remember I saw a post on Facebook the other day. They were saying this person posed all her problems and say, if any Course in Miracle people say choose once again, I will defriend you. And it's like, just sometimes, do not use pretty words and high concept to hide what wants to come out in a specific form, to reveal as the specific hooks, and blocks. So that's really what I see, how beautiful the projects and functions here can be used.
Do you want to play Unwind or not?
Yes.
I'd be happy to. If I were to, I would need a couple minutes to retune my guitar so a different tuning. So
How about I play this God's Whisper
While you retune.
while you retune?
I'll take it. Yeah, I'll just take the guitar out for a moment.
This is-
You wanted to play the song, so you
Yeah, this is so you set it up so well. I should look from. This is from the movie Lucy that we all went to see recently, and it plays out at the end of it, and there's not been any talk of God or anything in the film, even though it's completely transcendent and is unwinding the mind right back to God. And then this song just booms out at the end, God's Whisper. It just speaks for itself. It's very powerful. It just feels like that point of power. It's like it's an immediacy to it.
Yeah, the movie's about just allowing your mind to just go for Christ now. Like, no delay. Like, allow it to happen. Like, there's no time for delay, actually. It must happen right now. So and we're all, and God's whispering this to us. There's no forced
And your self-concept,
awakening.
yeah, your self-concept won't stand in the way as soon as you make that decision. Like the character Lucy, her self-concept just fizzles out so quick. It's not a block even.
It's immediate.
It's immediate.
She's just gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as far as I'm aware, this is the only book I know that has its own soundtrack. Kirsty and Pete, so far.
Hi, everybody. I was thinking of, like, I'm really nervous right now. I still get nervous when I'm actually asked to play in front of a group of people. There's still, like, these nerves that come up. And I was really trying to process that as everything was being shared. I was really trying to use that as much as I could to keep coming back, because my mind kept wanting to go to how much time before I might be asked to play. And so I keep putting myself in future, keep taking myself out of here. How much, when might that word be said? Is Pete going to play? And, and how do I feel? And am I nervous? And so, yeah, I kept trying to use that. And, but mostly it seems like this is the moment that it needed to be used, to be willing to just say it now, to not come up and, like, try to harness and control and, like, I'm going to play through nervousness, like it's a performance. Like, I don't want to perform anymore. I do not want to perform. That's the main thing I'm thinking about, is I'm just like, I don't want to hear you're a good guitar player. I don't. I don't want to hear, hear this holistically and purely, you know what I mean? I'm not telling, clearly, like it's obvious, I'm not telling anybody not to say I like your song. Like, if you like my song, great. But I don't want to do that performance anymore. I don't want it to be about that. It's just so exhausting and so tiring. And this has been such a very specific format and function of lesson for that, you know what I mean? I started playing guitar when I was 13, so it's just been a story. Yeah, that's enough. Yeah, I don't want to perform anymore. This is just, this is not performance, this is thank you. This is thank you. When you see yourself as weary, come to me and be undone. When you see yourself as tired and unkind, come to me and I'll unwind your mind. I'm a brother you can lean on. When you find yourself in need, when all your private thoughts get heavy, when your heart begins to bleed, I'm your sister, I am your mother, I am your father and child. Let yourself fall into this oneness. Unwind your mind. Unwind your mind. Unwind your mind. Unwind your mind. You don't have to fix yourself anymore. You already are what you're looking for. Just unwind. So when you see yourself as weary, go to him and be undone. When you see yourself as tired and unkind, go to him and you unwind.